So thank you for joining this webinar today, Webinar Wednesday with City Moguls. We've been doing some really interesting talks with some incredible people every week. And we're very, very excited to have not only an incredible entrepreneur investor, but a mentor to us and an incredible mentor to many others, worldwide. And for those of you who don't know much about Michael, he's been through 2 crises before, so he knows how to navigate the waters a little bit better than probably most of us. And so we really wanted to just bring him on to share his advice, open up the floor if you want to ask any questions. Feel free to ask questions throughout on the chat bar. So at the bottom of your screen, if you haven't used Zoom, you can click at the bottom. There's a chat button, and feel free to chat with us directly. Myself and Victoria are going to monitor that chat bar. No question is too silly or too small or too big. That's what today is for. And I know there's a bunch of small business owners with us today. So this is going to be super interesting. And Michael, thank you so much for being here with us.
Sure.
I guess we're just going to kick it off because I know that we want to keep this tight. We're going to keep this to about 45 minutes. So I think we wanted to just jump in and kind of go a little bit backwards and hear how you dealt with, what happened during 9/11, 2001, and what happened with your companies in 2008.
Yeah, that's a big question. Maybe I can preface that by talking about crisis in general. Okay, so we had definitely a crisis of the dot-com crisis and the 9/11 crisis back in the early 2000s. Then we had another crisis in 08, 09. They're distinctly different. The dot-com crisis and certainly 9/11. 9/11 was an interesting crisis because it happened all of a sudden, and it just suddenly the planes hit the building and everything happened one morning. The crisis of the dot-com implosion was an irrational exuberance in one community, in the tech community. It leaked over, but it wasn't as epic. The 2008, 2009 crisis was very different. It was a systemic banking problem, and that was very, very painful and very difficult because we have a liquidity crisis with the banks, and you never want to see that happen. If the US Fed didn't put trillions of dollars into the economy, many banks in the US and would have rolled over to many other economies would have been functionally bankrupt. That took a while to come back. I mean, the stock market, I don't think, came all the way back till 2011. As a comparison, the crash in 1929, some of your listeners may not know this, but it took till 1954 for the stock market to come back. So you think about the relative efficiencies and what happened back in the earlier part of the century. The last crisis, we could understand it. We could understand that it was a liquidity crisis with the banks, and we could understand that we have a lot of dirty bonds. We have a bunch of houses. We could somehow bring supply and demand together, and we could churn our way through these bonds and what have you. This is very, very different. This is something that's not been on anybody's schedule. So if you're a small business owner right now and you're watching this, you're thinking like, why didn't I see this coming? It's because nobody saw this coming. There was no scenario last year if I was at one of your board meetings where I'd say, now I want you to plan for every company functionally in North America to shut down unless you're selling face masks and hand sanitizer. You would say, Michael, get out, you're crazy. And you'd be correct, because this is such an edge case. It is such something that we don't model. But interestingly, many doctors and even Bill Gates back in 2015 says we are going to get a pandemic. And I think we all in one way knew that in the very back of our head, but no one knew what that really meant of a shutting down of economy. I'll bring you back to a framework in 9/11 after the planes hit the building. Before that, you could go to New York, you can go to Toronto, and you can go up any building you wanted, and it was just fine. There's no ID checks. After 9/11, a complete structure came out of that of security. And it was like everybody's checked. Airports, height and level, everything's about security. Department of Homeland Security was developed. Everything was a framework around security after 9/11. After this, I think the similar thing is going to happen. We're going to have an entirely new framework. This is so shocking and so deep, and it could be a lot more prolonged, that we're going to have an entirely new framework. And I would suggest that it's going to get very interesting and somewhat intrusive, because I think we're going to get to the point of maybe you can't go into an event unless you can test for certain antibodies. Maybe you have to prove you're vaccinated to go to certain things. It may get there in the next 1 or 2 years. It's going to be a very different framework. From the business point of view, I think that, it's funny because I've done a number of these podcasts And the podcast that I did 2 and 3 weeks ago, it feels like it was done 3 years ago, right? But really, things are moving incredibly quickly. We know a lot more every single week, and we see, what's happening in China, what's happening in Europe, especially Italy, and how that's rolling through to New York, and how it's rolled through here, and what social distancing and all the data we're putting together. But I would suggest that everybody running a business today needs to prepare for a few things. First off, it's not business as usual. This is war. Everybody who had a business plan a quarter ago, that business plan is functionally dead. It's finished. There is nothing about your business plan that you had before. There's nothing about the way you delivered your product or what you were doing or how you're going to price it at or your credit worthiness to your clients or suppliers or whatever is going to remain the same. There is not going to be any light switch that's going to turn on June 1st, July 1st, August 1st, September 1st, and everything is just the way it was. I don't believe we're ever going to go back to the way it was. It's going to be a little worse in some things and much better on other things as well. It's not going back to the way it's worth. And I think that we're finding out a lot of things about ourselves. I think we're finding out that we can work remotely, that we can order food, that we can use Zoom a lot more and everything else, that we can communicate a different way. But we're finding out that the business models we once had may not be the same. And I think if you're running a business today, I think you have to be very prepared that this is going to take a lot longer, that we've never stopped an economy, but we've never started an economy. So what that means is that in a liberal democracy like Canada or America or many of the G7 or 20 nations, they're not meant to be stopped. There's no scenario that says, what if we tell everybody they can't go to a restaurant, an airplane, any hotel, any sporting events? What if that happens? And no one actually thinks about that. And no one should think about that because it's so crazy. But it happened. And there is no scenario for that. And there's no scenario to restart that and what that means.
Right.
But when I'll suggest that when we restart this economy later on, and my best guess right now from the city of Toronto is 1 month from now, and that may be extended again. So in your head, you're in your home for another 28 days, says city of Toronto, for example, if you're in Canada. But I think you have to think that it may be months. And I think when it does open up, I think it's going to come back at half speed at best. Do you think you're going to rush on a cruise? Are you going to rush to a game? Are you going to rush on the subway? Are you going to go to a busy restaurant? I suggest that you won't. I suggest that the world comes back 50% and it'll be a steady incline. It'll take time. Some things, like maybe the day some places like high-end retailers open back up, people rush there for the first day. But that's going to be small. I think what's going to happen is the economy is going to take 12 and 18 months and 24 months. And, if you ask the airlines when Delta and United are suggesting they're going to be up to peak capacity, their answer is 2023. So it's going to take some time for everything to come back. I suggest you're going to be isolating until there's a vaccine. And I'm not a doctor. I did an undergrad in biochemistry, but I'll tell you that a vaccine normally takes 10 years. And if we get one in a year from now, that's lightning speed. That's speed of light. And if that happens, then how do we give everybody that vaccine and who gets it first? And then how do you prove that? And then what are you allowed to do and not do? And are there any antiviral drugs? Those take a long time. And the failure rate's very, very high, even though the whole world is in on it. So I suggest if you're running a business right now, you need to be prepared for the next 12 to 18 months being a very slow incline back to what you thought was normal. And
sure. And I want to touch on that a
normal.
little bit more, Michael, because I think that it's really interesting what some businesses are doing right now to pivot. And I know that you're all about pivoting and changing and, throwing away the old business model, putting in a new one. What does that really look like? And how did you do that also in 2008?
So it's a really, really great point. And take this the right way, but you should not let this crisis go to waste, in the sense that you should not allow the situation to not reevaluate everything about your business and everything about your business model. If you can't deliver your business model, you need to change it, and you need to figure out a better way to deliver it. I suggest that if you're a doctor right now, doing Zoom is going to be a major way to see your patients now. And it's going to be a major way going forward, by the way, because they're finding out for a lot of things that this kind of works. And you're going to be more virtual than you think. You're going to have to be much more creative. You're going to have to pivot. And the interesting thing about right now is that there's going to be a lot of green shoots. There's going to be massive companies born out of today. There is tremendous opportunity out of this crisis, in the sense that tremendous amounts of people need a ton of infrastructure around in the cloud and usage for everything. We obviously have found out that delivery of food is somewhat of a failure if you've tried to sign up for Instacart and you're waiting for a slot at 5 in the morning and you can't get it. We found out a whole bunch of things that don't work. This is where entrepreneurship comes forward. So let's start with kind of the basic premise. Let's look at your business today. Now, it's funny that we're having this conversation. It feels like we've been in this a long time because everybody on this video feels that they've woken up and it's Groundhog every single day. Every day is Monday.
It is absolutely Groundhog Day.
And I suggest that everybody has burned through their jogging pants, and I just keep ordering new ones. And that's okay. And that's what it is right now. And it's going to be this way for probably months. But you need to figure out how to repivot your company. So for this quarter that we're sitting in today, as we're having this Zoom, you need to get some perspective of what's happened. So let me just explain what's happened. In the entire 2008 and 9 period of 108 weeks at recession, there was an unemployment in the US of 9.8 million people. In the first 3 weeks of this forced paralysis that we've had, we've laid off 17 million in the US, and we're adding 6 million a week. We're adding 1 million a week in Canada. Already, unemployment in both countries are sitting between probably 15 and 20% somehow. And although it's not seen that way because it's a forced paralysis, it's going to be very hard to restart that. GDP in the US, if it ever hits -2 or 3, it's a very bad quarter, and it was unthinkable. This GDP in this quarter is going to be -34 to 36%. That is 2.5 times greater than any time in all of US history since the beginning of the nation in the 1700s. It is a number that is so staggering. It needs to be put in perspective of what's really going on. 1 in 10 Americans have lost their jobs already, and that's going to increase dramatically. Even though Canada and the US and our governments have been doing the right thing by pumping tons and tons of money into the system, the reason I'm bringing this up is that you will eventually downstream be affected by this incredible drag on spending in the economy. Both the US and Canada run on consumer spending. The consumer is going to be dragged down for the next coming quarters. You will somehow be pushed into that lane. You need to think about this and how to pivot in that lane. You need to be prepared when you're looking at your business today on having massive drops in sales, new sales this quarter, and then maybe you start making the drops not so bad in following quarters. Last podcast I did weeks ago, I suggested that you decrease your sales when you model your business 75% this quarter, new sales, and then you only drop it 50 going forward. But all the way, and I asked you a question, the people on this call, can you make it to March 31st right now without raising any cash? If you can't, you may have a real problem, because if you can't raise cash and you can't get debt, you need to think about what to do. Hope can't be a strategy right now for your business. You can't sit there and say, I just hope sales are going to come back next month. I think that's a very, very bad strategy. I think that we're going to be in a long, protracted recession, and it's going to get better and better, but it's going to take a while. We've never stopped, and we've never restarted an economy.
So that's a really good point. And I think that this question kind of leads off of that. So let's say your company now has, the cash flow has run out. What decisions are you making right now as a business? Like, what are the steps that you can take as a business when cash flow is done?
So first off, give you some perspective on what I think about this is that for the past 10 years to be a CEO in, let's say, in Canada or in the tech industry or any of the industries of people here has been easy compared to this. It's been easy because you could get money. Cash was trash. You can get money. You could get it somewhere. You can get debt. You can get into this group, this mentorship, that mentorship. You can get money. You knew that there was just a valuation that if you dropped it, you can get money. Now cash is king and you can't get money. This today is when leaders are born. It was kind of easier to be a founder 3 years ago, 2 years ago. Everybody's a founder. Everybody has a company. That was easy. There was money that taps on. Interest rates are the price of money, and interest rates for 200 years have been the lowest now in 200 years. It was easy to get liquidity. It's gone away. I suggest that right now that true leaders are born, that real leadership starts here. This is hard. There's no high fives. It's anxiety all the time. It's a lonely job. So what do you do if you can't get money? You bring it all in. I think you if you have staff, you call them, you bring them into a room, you say, this is the situation then. First, be candid, be honest, be upfront. Tell your staff where you are. Tell them that you're going to run out of money. And this is because I have some friends that have companies that was doing amazing and their revenue dropped 90% in 3 days. That's it. So it's not their fault, and it was not your fault that you couldn't have seen this coming. So first off, you know, you weren't supposed to model out dropping 90% in revenue or 50% like that in days, shutting you down, stopping you from going to the office. That wasn't a model that Canada or the US ever modeled into the situation, but it happened. So what do? You bring your staff in, you bring your people close, and you be honest. You ask them for help. You ask them to help you with the solution. You get them on maybe the government programs that we have right now. You maybe top them up in shares. So I have one friend that laid off the staff, put them on the government program. We'll just put them in the government program, and the extra 25% they can't get, they've given in equity. And they ask everybody just to get involved and row. There is absolute strength in leadership if you're real with your people and ask your people for help. It's weakness by trying to hold and keep things secret. Just ask for help. Be candid. Now, what you want to do with your investors is communicate. Over communicate. If you're not sending a Sunday night email to all your investors of this is what's going on, this is what I've done, these are the key priorities, you're wrong. Once a week. You need to have a meeting. You have to have a board meeting right now if you have investors every 2 weeks with key priorities. And right now in some of my companies, we meet once or twice a week just on subgroup priorities. Okay? So over communication. You also need to go to all of your suppliers and all of your vendors and you say, hey, I know I rented this space from you, but I never thought that we'd be stopped. And they'll be like, I understand, but we need money too. And you just need to say, okay, we're both in a shitty situation. How are we going to work it out? I get we have a document here saying I pay and you collect. I get it. But you know, it's not like there's a lineup of people to take this warehouse space or this store, and there's not going to be. So if I go under, it's not good for you. You want to help me? Do we defer? Can we do this? You've got to work it out. All your fixed expenses, go back to everybody and say, what can we do together? And you're going to find out who's a good partner and who's not, because there's no one should be saying to you, well, this is not our problem, screw you. It's everybody's problem to try to figure this out. Everybody needs to make allowances. And if they don't, well, they're not going to be doing a good business either. So you need to be really candid with your staff, you know, over communicate with your investors. You need to come up with creative solutions. And if there's no money, then it's stock or it's volunteering or it's use the government programs the way they are and just hustle. You're just going to have to grind this out for the next, honestly, 6, 12, 18 months. That's what it's going to be. And it's going to be slowly getting better. You know, even if there was a vaccine by Christmas, and that would be lightning fast and probably unlikely, it would still take a long time to work through the system, right? So, you know, if your job, for example, is to say, you know, you were supplying people who went to the NBA games or baseball games. Well, I don't see a time when we're all going to a movie theater or a crowded space for, honestly, in my head, another year where there's no vaccine. Like, how is that going to happen? And I don't know how that's going to happen or how he feels about that. Even if I wanted to take the risk, do I want to come home to my children? It's a problem. So you're going to have to figure out a way to get together with your staff, get together with your suppliers, get together with all your fixed costs, and renegotiate everything. There's nothing sacred about your OPEX line. So you have your revenue, you minus your cost of goods sold, and you have your gross margin at that top. Then you have all your expenses, all that stuff that could be fixed, everything that you pay a month. You have to go through all of it, and nothing's sacred. There is not one person that's sacred. That your salary as a founder is not sacred. Nothing is sacred. And you'll do what you got to do. You know, I'm working with companies that raised enormous amounts of money that have to make tremendous cuts, and it was the right thing to do. You saw publicly that one of our companies at Georgian Partners cut 60% of their staff, called Ritual. They did the right thing for the situation they're in. For example, Ritual is an amazing business. I mean, you should see the numbers internally, how fast that was growing. But no one planned a model for a great business like Ritual to say, hey, by the way, we're going to stop 100% of your customers, right? There was no model that's not even something you would phrase in. So they have to make a very hard cut, a really hard cut. But they did it. It was painful. It was shitty. But look, they're going to pivot. And I think they're going to be a hell of a lot stronger coming out of this. So sometimes you're going to just have to do some, you know, really tough things to make it through and protect what I call the mothership, which is your business. You know, I ask you, can you make it to the year 2021? Can you get to March 31st where I think the sun is shining a little bit better? Can you make it there? What are you prepared to do? And just, no one's going to blame you in this. Your employees are not. People understand if you have to roll back. And that's why the government has, I think, appropriately stepped up with the payments, right, to help you. You're going to have to literally hustle to get around this.
What does this mean for, from the other side, for, the investors, the sponsors, the people who are pumping money into companies? Obviously valuations are going way down, probably a good thing for the VCs, if I'm not wrong. I'm not an expert on this, but I would love to hear your opinion on what it means from the investor side.
Listen, this is how investment works. This is how it works. A VC works for things called LPs, and LPs are people who give them money. They're a GP, they're a general partnership. A bunch of very smart investors get together, they create a venture capital firm called a GP, okay, the general partnership. And they're funded by LPs, which are people that write them $1 or $10 or $100 million checks, and they get called and puts into companies. They work for the LPs and they try to get returns. You can try to be predatorial if you want and try to own the company and pin them down. But if the management team doesn't have much ownership, they're not motivated, no one's going to win anyways. So none of the VCs that I've invested in or with are predatorial. They're trying to work it out like everybody else. Really good partners. And you're going to find out, by the way, if you have an investor, if they're a good investor, because everybody in this past, 8 or 10 years I've been investing, it's been so good that, they've never seen a massive turn down. So they've always been great partners, right? So you're going to find out right now if your investors are good or not. And good investors are going to make the following statement: I understand this is really hard. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's figure out how to get through this, and let's just get into 2021. Do what we have to do. And they should be supporting you. And they should be supporting you with advice, board meetings, an internal round of money. Maybe it's just enough to get through, building models, maybe getting debt. If they put in some money, sometimes the BDC is putting in some money. The government has some good programs. How do you hustle through? Bad investors will try to take advantage of you or wait for you to be in a desperate situation. Those things are not helpful. And quite frankly, most that I know are not like that. They're just trying to hustle through the situation.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, you really will find out very quickly who's sticking by you during this time, which is a very good point. And it will be interesting to see for a lot of companies that do have that. And there are a lot of companies though, and there are a lot of small businesses, especially on this call, who don't have investors, who don't have anything like that. And they're pushing out a lot of free content and selling free services and free products. Is that a good move? Is that a good move right now? Should we be charging for the things that are not necessarily essential?
Well, I think you should charge for anything that you can charge for, that people want to pay in value. I just think people are going to be a lot more skeptical about paying for anything. I mean, right. Interesting thing that we're on right now, Zoom, it's $20 a month, or I think it's 16 or 17 bucks if you pay annually. The interesting thing about Zoom is, residential buyers are buying now. Like, people are buying Zoom at home, like they bought, a cell phone. Like, people are buying Zoom. It's not just businesses, right? So it's become essential. It's become the name, but so is GoToMeeting, or you can use Microsoft Teams. They're all really great. But I mean, you will get paid for things that are of value right now, and everything will be scrutinized. I mean, certainly if you're selling face masks and hand sanitizer, you're going to get paid a lot of money, and everything comes down from there. So I think the question you should ask yourself is, do I have anything of value to sell? Yeah, and right now that's going to be scrutinized more than anything.
Well, yeah, and there's also the flip side of that. Like, who is going to be paying for these things, right? Who wants to be putting money down for non-essential anything?
Listen, it's Mother's Day's coming up. Do I get my wife, I was thinking I'll get her, something nice. It's our first Mother's Day with our new baby. So I'm going to get her, maybe I was thinking, do I get her a nice little purse from a nice place? I'm thinking, well, I've done that before, but why? Right? For the next while, we're not going to any fancy, can't even really use it. So maybe, and don't tell her this, but maybe I'll be buying her more lounge around the house clothes, some really nice comfortable stuff to wear. And that's, look at the explosion right now of jogging pants, right? Lululemon, what are they sending out? Jogging pants. Like, everybody's like, I'm fascinated with jogging pants. My guy who makes my suits, Garrison, who makes the suits with the TV show Suits. I mean, there's no better suits in Canada, right? But I'm like, Mike, time to make jogging pants. And we're having that conversation today because, I don't know where I'm going to wear a suit next. I got nice suits, but So
Well, we can
I think
watch you on the Mogul Awards from 2017, rocking your Garrison bespoke suit. So
yeah, with the white sneakers. Yeah.
yeah,
So but that's interesting, right? So when the world opens back up, there's no vaccine. Who's going to take the train to work? Who's going to come in? I think people are going to be working from home in their jogging pants for a lot longer, and we're going to prove that we can. I don't see all the big banks telling everybody take the GO train and take the subway into work. I mean, one of my friends is a VP at Scotiabank. He walks to work so he can go, but I don't see the world opening up the same way. I mean, how many people here are going to go to a busy restaurant in September? There's no antiviral and there's no vaccine, right? Like you might, but probably not. Why? Because you're all young and healthy on this call, but you have parents, so many children, right? So what I'm trying to do is frame for you the business environment you're walking into, which is a partially open Toronto that you can do some things, not everything. And you're going to be using Zoom for a lot longer. It's going to go on for a long time. And I don't think a lot of people are ever going to go back to the office. I think we're going to find that workforces have anywhere between 25 and 50% of their people working from home. Here's the problem though. Only 1/3 of Americans can work from home. That's the problem, and probably similar in Canada.
yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, I watched your segment with Beta Kit with my buddy Douglas, and
Yeah.
you said something to him which I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into, and we're going to get to optimism very soon because I know that you are eternal optimist as well with all of this. But you said wartime mind share, and I want to understand a little bit more about what that really means to you.
So like I've repeated a number of times, everybody here, if you weren't a CEO in 2008, you've only been a peacetime CEO. There was always money. You could find debt. There were customers. You could get on a plane, a train, an automobile, and go see your clients. Everything was, yeah, it was hard, but you could do it, right? We are at war. And if you don't put on a wartime hat now and think that you have to be all in on this and really make decisive actions, you're in trouble. Like hope, and I've said this a number of times, and this is not my statement, it's in many people's statements, hope is not a strategy. Being indecisive is not a strategy. Having inaction right now is not a strategy. Not getting close to your investors and employees and being candid and honest and ruthless with your balance sheet is not a strategy. I've spoken to companies whose revenue, I spoke to a company last week whose revenue is down 50%. And I'm like, have you done anything with your staff? Have you gone for a government program? Have you done this? Have you decreased? I'm like, no, well, I think it's probably going to be okay next month. I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, I mean, how do I respond to that? That suddenly the sun is going to shine next month and every one of these companies they source, I know is not going to open for 5-6 months. It's ridiculous. And remember, if you have to put people on in a government assisted program or you have to lay some people off, you're trying to protect the jobs that you have too. There's no scenario that says if you lose 50% or 90% of your revenue, you can keep going, because you'll just won't keep going. You need to get a mindset right now that you need to do everything you can to keep the people that you have and move the ship forward. And the thing I'll keep repeating is, have you brought your staff in? Have you brought your people in and asked for them to contribute? I've got a company called Blue Cat I'm still on the board of. Do you know that we have calls with the whole staff? We have like 400 people every 2 weeks, and we ask the staff, can you come up with cost cutting measures? People have come up with like really innovative. Like one guy comes from Germany and he's like, by the way, if you change this card on our box that we sell, the data center box that we sell, we save $500 a box. And we're like, we didn't even know that. So we made that change, $500 a box. Like we asked the staff to contribute and they've been amazing. So you're going to have to like think about how to bring everybody into this wartime scenario and tell people we're in wartime. Like get them involved with that.
Yeah, it's almost like an exciting thing. Like how creative can we be?
Yeah, and there's tremendous amounts of opportunity right now. Don't fall into the kind of CNN cycle of only doom and gloom. And like, yes, it's horrible the losses that we're taking and people that are passing away. But you've got to stay positive in this time. And okay, the mindset you have to have is this: what a shitty time. I am going to make it out. And you know what? If you go back to all the prisoners of war back in World War II and Vietnam, and you and you find out who lived through the prisoner of war scenario when they were captured, it was the people that said, we're going to get out by Christmas and didn't. The people were going to get out by Easter and didn't. They actually died of a broken heart eventually. This was a study done. The ones that made it out said, I'm in a terrible situation, but we are going to make it out. So you're in a terrible situation, but you are going to make it out, right? There is going to be light. And I assure you this will pass and there will be light. But did you make decisive actions? Did you pivot? Did you get serious with your staff and your suppliers? Did you over communicate with your investors? What did you do in the time of crisis? Because inaction won't work. What will work is having a plan, and nothing is sacred on your balance sheet. Nothing. Cut everything, change everything that you have to change to make it through. You know, I'll give you a couple of other examples. A bunch of us, we know one guy knew somebody that has an incredible butcher shop that serves the meat to all the steak restaurants in Toronto. What an amazing, I could never buy it. He won't sell to me. I was, before COVID, I'm nothing. He has 1 million pounds of meat, like the best steaks you've ever tasted. So a bunch of us are calling him up, and we spend a lot of money bringing in all the greatest steaks and things to our homes and all like that, because we can go directly. He's pivoted his entire business right now just to dropping off meat at people's homes, right? Because he still has 1 million pounds of meat. They got to go somewhere. Might as well go to the home. And you can't get good meat at the grocery store right now if you've been. I feel like I have to dress up as Boba Fett and walk around in a mask. It's crazy. But that's the pivot of that business, right? How about many of you seen that I've done a lot of keynote speeches around the country, right? I can't give a keynote speech for a long time in front of a crowd. So what is the speakers agency doing? Well, they're going to go all virtual, and they're going to bring speakers into people's jobs. Everybody has to make a dramatic pivot. I mean, just think about companies that might be worse off than yours. Just think about, I'll give you another example. My wife's on a mom's group. Now, this mom's group is a WhatsApp chat, and there's got to be 500 moms on it. And I would call it the most powerful constituent group I've ever seen in my life. They know everything. Like, someone says something, some woman knows, and it is crazy who's on that group. One woman says, I'm having a bad night. My husband's cooking like a lot of quiches. And people were like, well, what's the problem with that? She throws out a picture, and the entire table is full of quiches. It turns out that they have 3 restaurants called The Starving Artist. And they're amazing restaurants.
Love The Starving Artist.
They're closed. So what did she do? So people started writing back on the WhatsApp, I'll take one. She goes, really? So what has she done? She made a menu, sent it out to the moms group. Every Friday, we buy directly from them. It's $12 for a vat of chili. Like, there's no Uber Eats fee. There's no delivery fee. He comes to your house and drops it off. $12 for a big, like, it would serve 3 people, right?
That's incredible.
It'd be $19 if it was Uber Eats, but I'm helping them. I'm buying directly. I get incredible homemade food, right? So she took her entire business and said, by accident, by the way, look at it was like 14 quiches. And I believe going forward that maybe The Starving Artist has 1 restaurant going forward. I don't know what they're going to do, but let me tell you, the food is incredible. And the point is that they lost 100% of their revenue, made this pivot. And I'm going to tell you, I think they can make it. The speakers group lost 100% of what they're doing because we can't go out. Pivot. They're going to make it. It's like, how do you pivot everything that you are, right? I mean, we are dealing with businesses in Toronto that lost 100% of their revenue. And if they don't pivot, it's Darwinian, right? Creative destructionism and capitalism just wipes out all the companies. And I assure you, many companies won't make the pivot and won't make it. There are companies that just believe that in the next couple of months, guys like Michael Hyatt are going to go across the country and give big speeches to thousands of people like I was doing. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. It won't happen for a long time. It will happen again, but got to make a pivot. Do I make some sense? Like,
yeah,
there's the
really
person that says my hope's my strategy. Then a couple months, everything's back because it's got to be. I don't know. Where are you getting that? And the people saying, what a shitty time. I'm going to do what's necessary to make it through.
Yeah. And it's a great attitude to have, because you're 100% right. Those people will come out on top. And if nothing else, there's going to be a lot more learnings from those people who weren't just sitting around twiddling their thumbs. We have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
So Natalie's asking, if you had to hypothesize, what do you think the economy will look like in the future? This is an unprecedented event that will likely change us forever.
Yeah, that's a very big question, but I assure you the cloud is going to become 10 times more important. And I'm going to tell you, we don't have the infrastructure right now to give you high def Netflix and Zoom and everything else. So we have a huge infrastructure problem, but I believe the cloud is going to utterly eat the planet a lot faster. I believe 10,000 job titles are going to go away, but 10,000 job titles will be created. I think people are going to travel less for a while, go to less things, go to less events, and people are going to be more into their community for the next while, which is kind of strange. For example, I love Tokyo. I want to go to Tokyo, but I can't go probably for a few years or whatever it is. But I suggest that the world is going to be just hyper. What would have taken 10 years to get to the cloud, it's going to take 2, right? We're going to hyper move the economy towards this cloud and virtual experience a lot faster. I believe that people that would not, we like shopping, getting food, but never use Instacart or whatever. I believe that would have taken 8 years. Now it's going to take 1 year. Everything's going to be squeezed into coming to the home, virtual. Everything you think is going to happen is going to happen. Telemedicine is going to get massive. You're probably going to go to that doctor appointment because you really, really have to show them that rash. But honestly, you can just, my baby has a rash around her mouth. So we decided just to go on Zoom. They said, okay, that's drool. Okay, a little cortisone.
That's
they
incredible.
Charge the government. Yeah, that's going to happen because now we can knock that out. We don't always have to go, and going is really expensive, right? And for them, for us. So telemedicine is all like, we're going to be able to do a lot more things because we're forced to do this right now. So I suggest that everything you see that's happening is going to happen. And I believe a lot more people will work from home. And I think you can find that they'll be productive. So we're going to have to find that balance a lot faster than we want because we're forced to find it. I believe the economy is going to take a lot longer to come back than you think. If we hit unemployment of 15 to 20%, when the economy reopens, we don't drop down to 6% in a month. We'll probably go, if it was 18, it's going to drop to 15, then 14, then 13, then 12. That's how it's going to go. Let me give you an example. You have a store. You open it up tomorrow. You had 17 employees. Maybe you bring back 8. You see what I mean? It's not going to be so fast.
Yeah, and it's very true. And I think that, there's a lot going on. And I think if people really kind of dig deep and do what you're saying, where, thinking long-term and strategizing, it's going to be huge. Not to put you on the spot, Oren, but you have a great question, and I would love for you to jump on camera and unmute yourself if you're open to it. And if you're not, that's totally fine.
I'll do the unmute. I don't want to show you my bedroom, though.
No problem.
Hi, Michael. So my question is around higher education, universities and colleges. A lot of talk around how they have to adapt their business models. Obviously, classes are on Zoom right now. Do you think that's effective? And ultimately, how do you think higher education will have to adapt their businesses, universities, colleges, to accommodate for this crisis? Potentially in the long term, this is going to change how people think about universities and colleges, young students applying now. So what do you think those higher educational institutions should be thinking about in terms of their business models now and in the long term?
One of our best performing, I'm on the advisory board of Georgian Partners in Toronto, but and I'm a little biased towards their investing, obviously, but one of our best performing assets over this crisis is Top Hat. And why is that? That's because they're e-learning everything and making it so the professor can do that. I think that universities are going to have to really, really, really think their strategy very, very tough. I believe online learning is going to absolutely explode. And I think there's going to be a lot less people traveling to that campus. People are still going to go because I think, if you're doing science, you need to go to laboratory and stuff like that. But I think that there's going to be a lot more e-learning, remote learning, and maybe you only go for certain times of the year. You're not there all year. There's going to be a whole bunch of changes. It's going to be dramatic, the changes to online learning, to just universities. And some won't make it through this.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. And thanks, Oren, for the question. We have a few more coming in. Andres, and you guys can totally jump on camera and unmute yourself if you'd like to. And if you don't want to, that is no problem. I can ask it for you. But I'm going to go to Andres P. If you wanted to ask your question to Michael, you have a great question there.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Michael, for joining and helping us out as entrepreneurs. We're could be a little bit lost with the situation with, where is the investment going? Have things pivoted from your end as well? So my question was, did your appetite for your investment change from this pandemic? Is it slowing down? Is it increasing? Is it an opportunity for you to invest in different businesses as opposed to the traditional ones you've been investing in?
Amazing question.
Thank
Amazing. The short answer is I've been investing a lot and I've been investing a little, meaning that my investment thesis has changed dramatically because there's a whole bunch of companies I can't invest more in or can't be in. We were closing 2 or 3 deals that we had to say no to because, quite honestly, the valuations and stuff that the world had before doesn't make any sense right now. It's so uncertain. And it was so fast that this happened. And there's other things that we're double downing on. I mean, for example, we were very, very into doing a lot of private deals right now. But when the market dropped 30, 40, 50%, it was a buying chance of a lifetime to buy Microsoft on sale, Facebook, Google, a lot of things that you think that would do really well. There was a buying chance of a lifetime. I took risks. For example, I'll even tell you some stuff I bought. Like I took risks and I thought, I don't think Air Canada's going away. Started to buy it at the bottom. I mean, it made sense to me. There's a lot of things where, as an investor, I saw the return on a public stock that's liquid, that's better than a private. So actually, for a long time, it would like be doing these private deals to try to get a return, a certain thing on the return curve based on a risk reward return. We saw it as soon as this crash happened, this market pull down. We saw buying these big companies that were great companies having a bad time. That's what Warren Buffett would say. That was the place to put your money, and that's what we did. Bear in mind something about the stock market when you invest. These bailouts and everything you've seen from the government help big companies, not likely small companies, and don't really help Main Street, not for a while. So it takes some time. If I'm talking about private deals that I'm doing, we're a lot more skeptical and we're waiting this out. We actually, our family office is looking for companies to actually acquire. And one of the issues is that we don't think we've seen the fallout yet. We think that we can't understand what's going to happen to a company's balance sheet today. We think it takes 1 or 2 more quarters to really see what happens, how they're really maneuvering in the pandemic, because we really don't know what's going to happen. So it's a lot of guesswork. And it's not like we're waiting to be opportunistic. We just don't know if they're going to go up or down. And in fact, I'd like to buy into a company that's going up and pay more. So I kind of have the opposite mentality.
Great. Thanks, Michael. That's on the stock front, a stock market side, but on the actual startup scene, like they're delivering a product, they're delivering our service. Is your criteria now that they have to be virtual, that there has to be a disaster recovery strategy in place for you to sort of be swayed into writing something down in terms of an investment?
That's a really good question. The short answer is yes, because I don't see how you have to have a very effective virtual delivery of some kind. I mean, if you're selling a widget, then you're going to have to get it to somebody. I'm not asking for something physical to be virtual, but what I'm saying is that you have to show that in the next 12 to 18 months, you're going to have demand for your product and you can get it to the homeowner or get it to wherever. So I'm not enamored with the virtual. What I'm enamored with is there going to be demand for what you're selling. I mean, like, let me just give the example, suits to jogging pants. I'll buy the jogging pants right now for a while, right?
Awesome. Thanks, Michael.
Both are physical. Yeah.
Thanks, Andres, for your question. Josh kind of has a similar question. Josh, I don't know if you want to jump on your mic and ask Mike this question that you have, kind of a similar realm there.
Sure. Hey, Mike. Appreciate you doing this. Question is a lot of, not even a lot, but just probably for everybody else, there's a lot of VCs right now that are saying that they're open for business and writing checks still. And my question is, do you actually see that happening? And what are you seeing internally, not just specifically on Georgian, but from other VC funds on how they're navigating through this? Like, what's real right now from a VC front?
Georgian just raised $850 million, so they could not have been in a better location right now because they have so much dry powder. So they are investing, I can assure you. I can't tell you what because I can't disclose that, but they're actively bringing in deals and they're using this time. I would say the problem with VCs that have ongoing funds that are a little later in the vintage of the fund is that they've looked at their 12 investments or their 8 investments or their 26 investments and they're triaging them. 1/3 are just doing fine, no problem, government services, fine. 1/3 are, okay, they can produce profit, they can make it through, we'll be on a board meeting. And 1/3, on fire, liquidity crisis. The problem is that if everything exits and this third does badly, the entire VC fund does badly. You've got to triage that. The reason why some of you think that VCs aren't investing is that they're triaging and trying to get through the blood pool over here. And there's a bunch of their portfolios doing really, really well. There's no VC that I know that doesn't have some companies that had a massive amount of revenues, just overnight gone. So they're going to triage that to save that. So I think it's just where they're putting their time right now. But they're open for business, but they're trying to figure out how to solve this so their fund actually exits. Because when you try to exit a VC fund and have an overall multiple, you can't have that many problems. You know what I mean? So, I mean, you can have that Shopify deal that does really, really well, but you can't just have a whole bunch of turds, right? And so you have to triage the problem. And I'll just reinforce one more time, it's really, really early in the crisis. The problems don't come now. The problems come in the next 2 quarters. And how, like if we all speak in September, I'll know how you're doing in the pandemic because you've had a quarter. I've seen your revenues run through. I mean, gosh, can you believe it? We're only 30 days into this. It feels like 3 years, but give it another 90 days and then we'll see how you're really doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks. That was helpful.
Great. Thanks, Josh, for your question. We are going to try and stay very on time because we like to just jam pack these things and let everyone get back to what they are doing. But if anyone has any final questions, we'd love to get them right now. And I'll give you a second just to kind of think about that. But I want to thank Michael for being here. And it's huge to have someone like you just kind of talk about these things and give us some insight, some tangible things that we can all walk away with, which is super important right now. And so thank you for being here.
I have a question.
Sure. Love it.
So Michael just mentioned about that the speaking business people who were speaking had to pivot. What does that pivot look like for individual or small business people who were into the speaking business?
So you're in the speaking business?
Yes, I'm a subject matter expert and I talk about leadership, but as you said, there will be no in-person speaking business for huge fees or things like that. Yeah. What can we do? I mean, yes, if we can do virtual meetings and virtual topics, but
yeah. So here's the pivot. Here, I'll give you the pivot. I'll tell you what you should do. Lower your fee and start coming in on everybody's Zoom call, because let's be honest, people are having daily Zoom calls with hundreds of staff. And would they like a guest speaker for you for 20,000? No. Would they like it for 5? Maybe. Do you know what I mean? Because you don't have to leave your home, so you're going to decrease the price. Mm-hmm. And would you come on a Zoom and give a 20-minute talk on leadership and show some slides? And would it be refreshing to the other side to have you come on for a low fee, because you can just do a whole bunch of these? So drop your price right down, right? And just do a lot of these from home and come on in and give your leadership things. I mean, a lot of people want to hear from you. Here's a crazy thing. People are getting so bored of these Zoom calls and stuff like that. People want a little bit of something else that not only will bring in leaders like you help. I've actually seen something yesterday that was so silly and brilliant. I saw a company for $500, you can have a llama come into your speak. Now it sounds crazy, but they'll bring in farm animals that'll sit on the Zoom, and it's just kind of funny and relaxing, and they're getting $500 a Zoom for it. So, like, I've done a lot of speeches, and am I going to do a Zoom speech? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know if I want to, but certainly just lower your price, start doing the virtual. People are looking for something, levity, fun, and something different. Leadership is something they desperately need right now. I'm sure you could do really well.
That was my next question. You touched upon it, that right now our focus is what is happening with the COVID-19 and how it is impacting our life. Yeah. And if you pivot to something which is not related to that, there will be 2 schools of thoughts on it. Some will take it greatly, others will not take it greatly. That how come you can talk about something which is not even needed or required right now to talk about? And I think we have to figure out what the right balance of the pivot is.
100%. I mean, listen, you're going to pivot your business today from 3% to 75%. I don't know which one it is, but it's not business as usual.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Joella. I appreciate you weighing in there and asking that question.
Looks like Christine has a question.
Hello. Hi, I have a question.
Hi, Christine, go ahead.
Hi, Michael. So I'm a dance studio owner, and I've been doing these virtual Zoom classes pretty early in the game, of course, since the COVID happened. And I'm just wondering, like, what your thoughts are on, like, kind of longer sustainability. So I've been, I run like almost daily Zoom classes, and it's great because, it's dance. I can teach my kids at home or my adults. But do you have any ideas on, like, kind of longer sustainability? Like, if this is going to happen for the next 3 months, do you have any advice for a studio owner of how I can kind of maintain my client base for the next like 3 months, if that happens?
Listen, I think you just have to literally keep doing what you're doing and figure out a way to have classes. I have a friend who has 2 gyms in Ottawa. Gyms are closed, so he's signing everybody up $60 a month to have virtual workout classes, and people are loving it. The Peloton experience is what you want to copy. By the way, you're a lot cheaper than Peloton. I don't need to spend a $2,000 bike, right? And it's a lot of fun. And I think a lot of people would love to do dance classes at home. And my wife co-opted me to do salsa classes, and I had to turn up to a place for 13 weeks, and it killed me because I suck. The most dancing I did was on the runway at City Moguls, but I'm telling you, what you're doing, you know what I like about what you're doing so much? It's fun. People need this right now. They need to take a break. They need to take a salsa class at home with you and virtual even. And it's like we're stuck. We're all in kind of like home arrest right now. So I can see this being such a fun thing to do in signing up. And I just think that you can keep expanding it. And you'd be surprised at how many people might want to sign up for that. I think you could do really, really well. I would just keep doing it. And I think you're going to be doing this for a while, because it's going to be very hard to have, 30 people show up to a dance class, because I don't think crowds are going to be allowed. It could be 2021 till you can get a crowd going. Yeah. So I think you should just develop this dance class virtually. I don't think you should slow down.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
And Christine, and for anyone else on this call, we are doing an incredible thing for International Dance Day on April 29th. It's on Wednesday. We're doing a full day of classes on City Moguls, and we would love to have you as one of our guest teachers if you're interested. So
yes, I would love that.
We'll talk offline.
Okay, cool.
We're going to wrap up. Thank you all for all of your questions. It was so insightful. And Michael, really thank you again for your time. Sure. For anyone that wants to join anything that is a little bit different, we've started an initiative called MOGUL Cruise. It's peer-to-peer digital meetups with intimate groups of people who are all from different industries. So it's a way to really connect with new people. It's a great way to network at this time and kind of, be accountable to a group of people. So our next cohort is starting at the end of April. So you can go to citymoguls.com and you can register for free. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. If you are looking to, for anything from Michael from this webinar, this is recorded and it will be up on our website later today. Tune in for next week's webinars with Eva Lau, an amazing investor, and Ashley Prose.
Oh, she's great.
Yeah.
She's wonderful.
Great. Yeah. I mean, she is incredible. And I think it will be kind of really great to hear her perspective on all of this as well. So weigh in next week, and we'll leave it at that. Michael, thank you again so much. Really, really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Mike.